Hello, everyone out there in the world tuning in today for Atlassian Remote Summit. My name is Leah Ryder. I am the brand and content marketing team lead for Trello here at Atlassian. And today we're going to talk about remote work. Talking about remote work to our millions of users every day is something that I do for my job. However, I've also been working remotely for over 7 years. So this is a topic that's really near and dear. I work remotely from Vancouver Island, Canada. I am the only Atlassian who lives in this area out of a 1,000-strong organization. And when I walk outside of my office to take a break and I want to go outside, this is pretty much what it looks like. In fact, I don't even need to resort to stock photography. Here is an actual video that I took the other day on my walk. And I just want to share this to give you the perspective of what it looks like for me when I am at work. And my remote office probably doesn't look like yours. If you work remotely, maybe your remote office atmosphere looks something like this, or maybe it looks something like this. But I can tell you what it doesn't look like. When you walk out of your office to take a quick break, what you don't see are the rest of your coworkers at their desks talking and collaborating and working on their computers. When you pop into the kitchen to grab a snack, you don't come across a brainstorming session that you decide to sit down and participate in. Your remote office and mine probably instead looks something like this. Or when you're talking to your coworkers, when I'm talking to my coworkers, it looks something like this. So when I'm out here walking around thinking about work, my experience is different than yours. And I just want to relate this to the fact that it can be isolating to be a remote worker. It can feel a little lonely. You can feel like a team of one. And it always kind of reminds me of this old-timey philosophy of if a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? When you're sitting at your office in your home working, it can feel one way. And what we want to talk about today is bringing remote work out of the shadows, talking about loneliness and collaboration issues, because related to this, if there are any other Canadians out there listening today, some deep cut Canadian folk music trivia for you. Bruce Cockburn wrote a song around this phrase, and we don't want to be Bruce. I mean, look at that angst on his face. Look at his leather vest, purple turtleneck. I mean, that is all feelings. And if you've been a remote worker yourself, or you're just new to remote work, this feeling, that expression, this is a very real place we can find ourselves in when we feel isolated from our teams and we don't feel visible or seen at work. Let's talk about what we mean when I say visible. I am a content marketer, so we are going to go to the dictionary. Visible has two definitions. The first is physical, being perceptible to the eye. This is important to be seen as we talk about FaceTime. But the second definition is the state of being publicly acknowledged or known, the human developed social construct of feeling like we matter. So when we talk about visibility at work, we talk about being included, being recognized, and valued by networks within our organization. Now that we have the context and framework of what visibility means, what we feel and what it looks like for each of us when we're sitting in our remote offices, let's talk about the state of remote work. And when we talk about the state of remote work, normally we kind of talk about, what does it mean for 2019, for 2020? But I just want to recognize that even in the past few weeks, remote work and the state of it has taken on a whole new meaning. Some of you might be brand new to remote work and you're setting up your teams very quickly. Some of you might be remote already, but you're being joined by your in-office counterparts in a remote team setting. So the state of remote work as it stands today is just very interesting time. And I hope that everything I'm talking about today can help support that. At Trello, remote work has been a fundamental part of our team for a long time. I've been working with Trello since before we were acquired, and I've been remote the entire time. We wrote this guide in 2017 that breaks down the core of how we approach remote work, and that concept is to embrace it. You embrace it both at the level of this is the way that the world is heading. This is a fundamental component of how our world is going to work and function in the economy, but also you embrace it on a day-to-day level and look at making it a great place to work. If you want to get a copy of this guide, just the quickest way is go to Google, search Trello Remote Guide, and get your own copy. This guide covers the cornerstones of communications, of setting up your tool stack, of how to organize and manage your team. Once we have those things set up, we want to talk about how do we make this a great place to work long term. What I'm not going to do in this presentation is convince you that remote work is worth it, that it's here to stay, because it is. Research has proven that remote workers are more productive. Remote work is a great way to find and attract talent, to retain a great team, to get great work done. This is proven. However, remote workers are also more isolated, and I don't think we've talked about this as much. So I really view it as the next remote work frontier. Now that we can function as a business in a remote setting, we know how to set this up and get teams on board. How can we make it a great place to work long term? Here are some of the issues we're up against. Buffer's 2020 State of Remote Work report polled remote workers on their top issue or struggle with working remotely. 50% of respondents said loneliness and collaboration issues were their number one issue. Related to that, Harvard Business Review reviewed a study done by Vital Smarts in 2017, talking about common team challenges. These are things like, I don't feel included on this project, my teammate is talking behind my back, I'm not sure if my boss likes me that much. All of these things are amplified in a remote work setting across the board. 84% of these common team challenges last and persist longer than necessary because of the remote work environment. Stanford did a study on remote workers in 2015, but there have been quite a few reports on the same topic since. They found that 50% of remote workers were less likely to get promoted than their in-office teammates. When you combine all of these things together and you think about where we're at with remote work, we have to ask ourselves, what could be contributing to these trends? I'm going to propose that it's a visibility problem. We talk a lot about vital remote skills like being a great communicator, being a self-starter, being self-motivated, but why don't we talk about being visible as one of these? I think it's kind of awkward. No one wants to say that they're intentionally manufacturing ways to be visible within the organization. It's a little try hard. I think we'd all love to believe we're doing great work and that great work's going to get great recognition all on its own. But when we are behind screens, we have to work a little harder to connect. And that's taken for granted by co-located teams. When you're a manager of a team in an office, you see when people come in the morning, you know when they leave. You might be walking down the hall thinking, who is the perfect person for this project? And they just happen to walk by. So you say hi and you get it started. You can build bonds faster and with more depth when you're co-located. All of this is related to one important factor: FaceTime. FaceTime is one of the most important connectors for business teams. It's getting in front of your manager, it's getting in front of other teammates, and as you can imagine, when we're not all sitting around the same office, it's harder to build FaceTime. A study done last year looked at the difference in amount of FaceTime for office team members and managers and remote team members and those managers. The folks who got the most FaceTime were the ones in the office, and the people that got the most FaceTime got better work assignments. They were given more promotions more often, and the in-office teammates and managers failed to notice what the researchers called sacrifice behind the signals. The researchers found that remote team members had to work harder to create more signals that they were visible, to message, to be seen, to be asked to do different work assignments. All of these things they were given less opportunities for because they were remote. So when we talk about visibility and why we think it's important related to collaboration issues, feelings of being lonely, issues around getting promoted, and common team challenges, we talk about three things. It's about being observed, seeing what people are doing in a remote team setting and knowing that they're contributing equally, acknowledging the value that they're bringing and engaging with them on a frequent basis. As remote workers, we just want to feel seen. We want to know that we're part of the team. So I think I've summarized really what we're up against here, and I don't want you to get discouraged. I think there's a framework to change and to bring visibility and the concept of shadow work to the forefront. And here's another concept to think about to work on that. Perceived proximity. They're two pretty big words, but I will explain it with an example. You all probably have family and friends who don't live in your neighborhood. They might live across the country and you may only see them once or twice a year. But I bet that you feel closer to those people than you feel to your next door neighbor who you may see more frequently in person. Perceived proximity is about creating a strong emotional and mental connection with people. And once those connections are built, that feeling can outlast physical distance. So this is the goal you want to get to with your remote team. You want to build a strong perceived proximity. The researchers who developed this concept looked at how you do this. And you do this in ways you probably already know. You communicate frequently, you have a shared identity as a team, but they went one step further. And this is what I want us to focus on. You want to communicate and you want to create a nice shared identity, but these 5 factors create that depth of perceived proximity. Feelings that your team is dependable, that they're reliable, that your teammates and your leadership are accessible to remote members, that you like working with them, and there's a level of informality that makes it comfortable to approach them. I think in an office, for example, you see, your boss sitting at their desk in their office, but the door is open. That's a signal that, hey, it's all right to come in and just drop in and say hello and ask me a question. It's a little harder to do that in chat. You might feel a little bit more hesitant to open up a DM window and bother them. You don't know if they're in a meeting or not. You don't have all those physical signals to know that they're available. So when we talk about creating an open workspace where remote teams feel seen, they need consistent, inclusive interactions. But they also need those interactions to be the right type. And the right type creates the sense that we're feeling visible. The visibility framework is something I developed to make this a little bit simpler. I love frameworks. I feel that they create ways to track efforts being made and to understand whether they're having an impact. And it's a way that your remote team can think intentionally about how they're interacting with other people at the company. There are 3 parts to this framework. The first is your strategic visibility. How are you seen as a contributor to business value? How are you seen within your role and what you deliver with your expertise? The second component is social visibility. This is about creating personal connections with others, being likable, creating more informality in your interactions. And then there's supportive visibility, and this is all about being a great team player, bringing a support to your team and letting them know that you're here for them on a regular basis. And then the second component is, where do we apply this framework? Well, when you're remote, your tool set is your workspace. This is your office. So we want to take this framework and apply the behaviors within the framework to the tools that you're using to communicate with each other. When you do that, you'll create consistent moments of visibility in your day-to-day work through the tools that you're working to create your workspace. So, social visibility, all about how do you create personal connections with each other. This is all about making the time. It is super easy to get caught up in your work. Remote workers are more productive because it's easier to focus on your work. That also means that social interactions often take a back seat. But it's just as important when you're remote to use work time for fun. When you're in an office, it's really easy to have a couple of laughs with a friend at work when you're getting a coffee or spending lunchtime with them or staying around after work for a happy hour. These things don't happen as often in a remote setting. So you want to be proactive. You want to encourage your team to reach out and participate in non-work conversations as events. A great way to make sure that people give value to this, as much value as they might give to their projects, is to make it a measure of their performance. I don't mean that you should, not give someone a promotion because they're not as sociable as another person on the team. That is not what I mean here. But I mean to talk about the social connection that your teammate or your report is having within the team as part of the performance conversations. This can add a lot of structure to it and give it importance. Setting the schedule around these events can go a long way as well, because being proactive at the individual level doesn't guarantee that people will do it. We all get busy. You can standardize socializing in chat with, for example, a Slack bot. You could automate questions to ask people, how they're doing, or to ask a fun question like, what did you have for lunch today? Or you could just set team rules like, every Monday, we all come in, say hello when we get online, and share a picture from our weekends. You can also set up video meetings or video calls to just hang out as a team. We like to do these on my team once every other week. We call them our brunch because some of us are eating lunch, some of us are eating breakfast, depending on where we live in the country, but just making the time. And then it's very important to review all of this regularly. Quarterly or twice a year, sit down as a team and talk about your communication charter and your social event schedule, because what works for you in the summer may not work for you in the winter, depending on the cadence of your company's quarterly system. And it's more about the value you're getting out of the interactions than the events that take place. So don't be afraid to be agile and change things up to make sure that everyone can participate. All right, let's look at how this works in the workplace. This is the fundamental tool stack that a lot of us at Trello use on a daily basis to collaborate and communicate. We use Trello for projects and work management. We use Confluence to track documentation, research, and longer form communications. We do our video calls on Zoom, and then we talk all day, every day in Slack. Trello is a great tool to use for non-work things as well. Here's an example of a book club that our team set up. You can use it to add lists for the different books you want to read, track minutes from your meetings. Really, the sky's the limit, but I just want to show you how you can think about the boards, lists, and cards system to organize gatherings or meetings or initiatives outside of your work projects. This is my marketing team's social club. We use this to plan our brunch video calls and what we're going to do on those. We tag playlists that we're listening to and add them here. We track birthdays and buy gifts for each other. The lists in here change often. The boards are really flexible, and we leave them at team visible setting so that anyone can feel free to join. It's creating the opportunity, like if you posted a poster up at the office bulletin board to sign up for the book club. This is the same way. People can find the book club board, add themselves, and join in on the conversation. Confluence is a great way to have social interactions with people, believe it or not. Here is the blog post that I wrote after we were acquired by Atlassian. I just wanted to, rather than give my professional background and talk about the projects I've done in the past, I just actually wrote up a lot about where I live. I wanted to create more context and have a little fun with my background and biography, and it created a lot of fun conversation. I ended up meeting a lot of the other Canadians around the company. And recently, this was a great example where some of the team members in Sydney went out with an intern to help him buy some glasses. And instead of just making the decision right there in the store, they took photos of each option, created a Confluence page, and shared it around the entire company worldwide to take votes on which pair of glasses George should buy. So if you're working with Confluence, I think you should give it a second look as an internal blogging platform and encourage people to use it for fun personal topics as much as they might use it to track projects or build meeting agendas. Two quick things I wanted to mention for Zoom and Slack. If you have meetings, large mandatory meetings with your company, maybe you host an all hands or quarterly business review, don't use the whole hour for business related discussion. Save 15 minutes at the end and use the breakout room function to split people out and let them have some small group socializing time. They're already there. You can break them out and let them just talk. You don't need to set a topic of conversation, but just create the space. In Slack, I'm sure a lot of people do this, but we have so many channels at Atlassian for personal interests. You can get really specific, like having one for dog owners, or we even have just a general bucket at Trello called Off Topic, where people can feel free to come in and drop anything that's on their mind that's not related to work. So be explicit. Everyone should use work time to socialize. It's important, it's valued, and it is a part of doing a great job as a remote worker. All right, now that we're having a lot of fun, we know each other personally, we're feeling comfortable, let's talk about strategic visibility. Strategic visibility is about showing who you are as a practitioner and expert in your role in the company, making sure that leadership understands the business value that you bring, and helping you work towards professional development and those opportunities for career advancement. Just like you would want to build an open concept space in a physical office to encourage collaboration and an open company, you want to do that in your tool set. The first way to do this is to encourage a healthy comment culture. At Atlassian, we really believe and practice this. We keep a lot, or if not all, of our project documents accessible and open for comments. We don't want to close things off and keep things behind closed doors. We encourage people to to read documents related to their work, but also unrelated, and leave comments. We treat it like a valuable hallway chatter, lunch table brainstorming. You want to pull in all the people at the company, have them feel comfortable to pitch in. Your business and your ideas and your projects will be stronger because of it. With a healthy comment culture and an open and accessible document structure, you want to be accessible asynchronously. Most remote teams cover a lot of different time zones, and not everyone can be in the room at the same time. So all decisions should be documented and made available for review asynchronously before finalizing. You want to give everyone the chance to show up. And thirdly, visible roles in a remote team can be more scarce. So if you have a chance to have FaceTime with leadership, maybe that's through a monthly check-in meeting, or when you're sharing updates in Slack to the whole company, make sure to rotate those roles within your team. You want every team member to get a chance to be seen, whether they're being that meeting lead or taking that information to the rest of the team in Slack. Don't take for granted those small interactions that give more face time in the company, and give everyone a chance to enjoy it. In Trello, team visible boards are so important for this, and we leave all of our boards at that setting. This is what a project management board looks like. And within a team, it's what it looks like for me, and it's what it looks like for you. We can all see all of the items in place and the tasks that are being worked on. We can see who is assigned to each task. We can read all of the attachments and see the due dates. Everyone has access to this and they can get involved, and that is the fundamental component of creating that open office. If you want to get visibility and feedback on things, but you want to create some anonymity rather than closing it off. If, for example, you can use the checklist function in Trello. You can see here that I've added the checklist and given it a name, but you can't see that I've added the items in the checklist. This is a great way to source anonymous feedback, especially when you're taking it in for that quarterly check-in on your communications charter. With Confluence at Atlassian, we really rely on the popular feed to create that healthy comment culture. Because of all our documents are open, documents that are really like hot topics get more likes, they get more comments, and that shoots them up the popular feed, and then more people can see it, and more activity creates more activity. And even though we're a global team with thousands of people, this feed can make us all feel part of the conversation at all times. If you want to share pages specifically with certain people, the email function is a great way to isolate and target those groups, but still keep those pages open. I think you'll be happy with the results. In Zoom, I just wanted to flag that not everyone likes to speak in large groups. So again, trying to create an equitable environment, give equal weighting to comments left in chat. You should encourage people to ask questions in chat if they want to do it that way and acknowledge it. It's just a great way to make sure that everyone's voice is heard. And in Slack, a lot can happen very quickly. You can get into a really great groove with the chat and you might want to come to a decision. But if everyone on your team isn't present because it's not their working hours, never close up the decision. Just leave it open and be upfront about that and say, hey, we had a discussion about this. We wanted to leave it open until everyone has a chance to review. Let us know what you think. This is the same for video calls. It's really easy to have a long video call and then close it off. But if not everyone was able to be there, just leave a quick confirmation in Slack that you had the video call with a summary of what happened and let people weigh in. It's about being explicit that immediate participation is not expected nor valued. This goes a long way to create a strategically equitable environment where everyone has the chance to pitch in and show how they can contribute. And on that note, finally, we have supportive visibility. Being a great team player. This is table stakes, so important for a remote team. Teamwork and that feeling of connectedness goes so far when you're not getting all that extra time together in person. And it doesn't take a lot. I like to say a reaction is worth 1,000 words, because when you're out there in that forest and you're feeling isolated and lonely, you're not sure if anyone is paying attention to the work you're doing, a quick reaction, a quick like on a Confluence page, a quick emoji reaction in Slack is that human touch that lets them know that you've seen them. I want to call out one thing that really bothers me. I call it the floating head syndrome. And when we talk about creating a supportive, equitable environment, when you have one person on remote who's on a giant screen and everyone else is then in the office around the conference table, that can feel very isolating and doesn't feel very supportive because people are crinkling their chip bags near the microphone. They're talking on the side of the screen and you can't quite hear them. So if one person is remote, everyone should dial in individually. This has been a fundamental rule of meetings at Trello, and it goes a long way to making sure everyone's voice is heard. Support can also come in manufacturing digital receipts of recognition. These create asynchronous, long-lasting ways to show your kudos or bravos for great things that people are doing. It's just really easy to give credit where credit is due by tagging them, say on a Confluence page, for example, and thanking them for their hard work, or manufacturing ways to share kudos in Slack. Fundamentally, you just don't want to leave anyone hanging. This should be your team rule. Never leave a question unanswered or shared information unacknowledged. A quick like or even a short comment is enough in the moment. If you walked into the office and you asked a question to the group and everyone ignored you, no one said a word, how would you feel? Leaving a question unacknowledged in Slack is pretty much the equivalent. So try and create a way to avoid those situations. I'll show you a great way that we do kudos at Trello. We have a monthly town hall meeting where everyone comes into a Zoom chat and we talk about, all the things related to the company at that time. We do also do a section for bravos, and we could just do it in the meeting itself and call it a day. But what about all the people that can't make the meeting that week? We add the bravos to Trello cards. We also then attach the items related to that bravo, and we write in the bravo into the card itself. And that way anyone can see it asynchronously. It just creates more visibility for the people. It's a bigger way to say thank you, and it creates a moment for everyone to be involved. And related to Zoom, I'm going to show you a photo. This is our team, and this is my coworker in the front. I'm in the video on the screen here. And these are the two ways, in fact, I believe the only two ways you should ever have meetings. Either everyone is in person, like they are at the lunch table, or everyone is dialing in from their individual computers on the video chat. If one person is remote, everyone is remote. That's my rule. As I mentioned, a simple like or in Confluence or emoji reactions in Slack are enough. It's just sending those signals that we support you. We're all here for each other as a team. And that's the team rule. Never leave an effort unacknowledged. When you're remote, your tool set is your workspace. So applying this framework of how are you going to be visible in that workspace? How are people going to know about all the great things you're doing in your job and making sure you get recognition professionally? How are you going to use that workspace and those tools to create great personal connections with your teammates and feel like you belong personally? And how are you going to have a sense that you belong to a team and feel supported through those tools. At the end of the day, this is what you should be asking yourself. Does it feel like a great office to work in? A great office is a place you want to stay for the long term. So building these things into your tools for your remote teams gives them the ability to enjoy that position for the long term. Because none of us want to be Bruce. None of us want to have this pained expression on our face, feeling lonely and isolated at home in our office. We don't want to wonder if people are noticing us. If we start to ask that question, is anyone even noticing me? I feel ignored and isolated. We want them to know, yes, we see you, we recognize the contributions that you're bringing, and we acknowledge you as a valued person on this team. So I just hope everyone goes remote and conquers. Thank you so much. If you have any questions for me, you can find me on Twitter at Leah Ryder. And I hope that this framework is something that you can bring to your teams. Thank you.